Hi, I'm Chinlu.
And I'm Sal, and this is our next make.
Last week we showed you our plans to build an epic chicken coop and garden. This week we're starting in on building the coop. We used SOLIDWORKS for Makers to design everything and plan out how we'd build the structure. The automatic materials cut list helped us accurately shop for all of the lumber, and the detailed drawings that we could access from our tablet helped us get everything right as we worked in Sal's parents' garage. I really love that saving our designs on the 3D Experience platform lets us access them anytime we need them, no matter where we are.
The first pieces we worked on were the 4x4 posts in the front and rear walls. They needed to be cut at an angle as well as notched to receive 2x4s. If we were back in our shop, I would have been able to use all of our larger corded tools to cut these in one go. But as we were over 1,000 miles away, I used only the battery-powered tools that I was able to pack in our car. It took more time, but I actually enjoyed the challenge of figuring out how to make the cuts with the smaller tools. When a blade couldn't reach all the way through, I would transfer my marks to the other side and cut again, or turn to another tool like the jigsaw to finish up a cut. That's how I completed the cheek cut on the notch at the top of the post. For simple cuts through thick material, I would just rotate the stock 90 degrees, line up to my previous cut, and cut again.
With all of the pieces cut to length, we could start assembling the walls. A nice flat garage floor really comes in handy for this step. We'd place just a few screws at the bottom of the posts and then check for square by measuring the diagonals. Once the measurements matched, we pre-drilled and added screws to hold everything in place.
Using the pre-cut pieces as temporary spacers to position adjacent parts helped us keep everything square in the first wall we built. It came out so well that we used it as a platform upon which to build the second wall. We just lined everything up as we built, and the second wall came out nice and square as well.
We used 5/8 T111 for the siding and screwed it to the wall before cutting it to length. Then we started cutting out the various openings. At first, we just drilled a pilot hole and used our palm router to cut out the opening. Although this worked, we felt that it was putting too much strain on the router, and the batteries were getting really hot. The outside temperature really wasn't helping matters. So we transitioned to first jigsawing away most of the material and then following up with a flush trim bit on the router.
The small windows at the top of the wall are for ventilation, so we just need to cover them with a lightweight metal mesh to keep out large insects and squirrels. If you live in an area with larger predators that might enter through these windows, you should consider using a heavier duty mesh here. This product cuts easily with metal snips and gets sandwiched between the siding and the frame. We use the siding screws to also hold the mesh in place.
The rear wall and its windows were built in the exact same way. And then we cut the siding for the two gable ends. We clamped 2 sheets of T111 together and cut them both at the same time so we'd have a perfect match.
To cut the access door on the gable wall, we made a plunge cut with a circular saw. This removes a minimal amount of material and allows us to use the offcut as the door. A cut like this can be dangerous if you're not careful, so use a straight edge as a guide if you can, and slowly plunge the saw into the wood while keeping both hands in complete control of the saw. Taking your time with this step will keep you safe and help you create a great result. Just finish up the corners with a jigsaw.
The last thing we built in the garage was the coop's floor. It's made up of a grid of 2x4s that gets covered by a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. Then we painted all of the siding with a high-quality exterior grade paint and primer. I would roll the large surfaces and Sal would follow up with a brush to make sure we got into the grooves of the T111.
The wall panels were fairly light, but we were glad to have our son lend a hand as we carried them from the garage. This corner of the yard is a bit uneven, so we used a few bricks to level the walls. Temporarily holding the walls in place by clamping a few long boards to them allows you to make quick adjustments as needed and get everything positioned correctly. Getting things right at this point will set the rest of the project up for success. We have the front and back walls all level, plumb, and square, and they're being held in place right now with a couple clamps. So we're going to install the floor system and the roof rafters, and that'll hold everything tight.
Once again, we used a few well-placed clamps to hold the floor in the perfect position while we screwed it in place. I had Sal crawl under the coop to get the screws low to the ground. Then he had me driving the screws highest in the air.
It wasn't supposed to rain today, but I guess every time we decide to build a structure and get to the roof, it decides to rain. This very much feels like our time in my brother's backyard when we were working on that shed. But if the pigeons are happy to be out in this weather, I guess we should be too. So we forged ahead and got all of the rafters installed. The next morning, we started working on the roof sheathing. After we got the large centerpiece installed, we got a little creative with our scraps and fit out the rest of the roof with 3 smaller pieces. This allowed us to avoid cutting into a third sheet, which saved us a little money. Because we have such a large overhang on the chicken coop, you can see that the plywood is actually misaligned here because there's nothing to support it. So we're going to screw in a 2x2 to strengthen this joint.
We just finished framing the sides. Now we're assembling the roost. This is where the chickens will rest at night to sleep. When you're not able to clamp right to the pieces, what I've done here is use the clamp as a stop so that we can at least register before we screw everything together. With the roost in place, we can apply the rest of the siding. Then we can head back into the garage to build the nesting boxes. We've learned that a chicken is comfortable nesting in a box that's about 12 inches by 12 inches. We designed ours to be just a little larger than that. To make matching sides for the nesting box, we clamp pieces together and cut them at the same time. We're ready to assemble the nesting box. Normally we would use pocket screws to assemble this, but we don't have the jig, so what we're gonna do is screw through the side directly into the plywood. When we do that, it's very important to pre-drill, otherwise the screw will separate the layers of the plywood.
Before inserting the nesting box, we slip a piece of end wall flashing up behind the siding. This will help the rain shed away from the building and off of the nesting box roof. Then we screw the box in place from the inside. How do I keep ending up in all these small spaces?
We dressed all the sides of the nesting box with more T111 and started working on its door. We stiffened a piece of siding with a few 2x2s and then attached the hinges and the latch. The door works really well, but can you tell that we didn't model this first in CAD? We didn't account for the 2x2 interfering with the center divider. I know it looks a bit like a beaver chute on this, but we did the best we could with a drill, a jigsaw, and let's be honest, a hammer. We hope the chickens don't mind.
We're finally at a point where we can install the metal roofing. Now, if you were going to do this on a house, you certainly would want to install an underlayment. But because this is a chicken coop, we're going to skip that step and just start with the drip edge. You should run the drip edge long and bend it up around the corner of the roof, making sure that the short side piece overlaps the bottom. Then secure it in place with roofing nails every 4 inches. The large roofing panels get installed next. They're held in place with special screws with integrated rubber washers. The screw placement is dictated by local building codes, so be sure to check what's required in your area. Where 2 panels overlap, be sure to apply a strip of butyl. It's a sticky rubberized material that will block water from seeping between the panels. With the drip edge and the roof panels in place, we can now focus on covering up the gable ends. To do that, we've got this special piece of trim. To make this part, and to escape the heat, I headed back into the garage. What I found is that in a pinch, you can use a set of pliers to bend your sheet metal. You just have to take your time, and I'm actually gonna sort of do a partial bend here. And just start it. And when I see it start to bend, I'm going to move down a little bit and do another one. And you can really start to form the 90. You can see it start to grow. Instead of doing all of it all at once from one spot, and then you can get a fairly nice 90-degree bend. And then I've also found if you really want to dress that up, I take sort of the rubber end. A rubber mallet would be better. And kind of make it a little bit more sharp of a bend. not having the perfect tools, I think that's a decent result. And just to dress this up a little bit, instead of having that point come down, I'm just going to nip that off. So that just makes it a little more neat. Just like we did between panels, we'll install a strip of butyl before we mount the gable trim. And we'll finish up the roof with another piece of drip edge at the peak.
The nesting box roof gets a similar treatment. We apply drip edge at the bottom and then a metal panel over the full surface. We also insert special foam gaskets to keep insects and driving rain out of the coop. And we simply bend over the panel on the side to guide the water down towards the drip edge.
The last bit to tackle was mounting the side door hinges and its latching hardware. Then, under the watchful eye of the site boss, and as the sun started to set, we began to apply the trim. We used a variety of PVC trim shapes to outline the windows and the doors, as well as the nesting boxes and the coop's corners. This detail really transformed the look of the coop. That took a ton of really hard work, but I'm super happy with the result.
Me too. I can't wait to get started on the garden and the chicken run.
Be sure to tune in next week when we show you how all of that came together.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you on our next make.